Hello and welcome to Thinking Outside the Box with me, Timbox.
And me, Britt.
We talk about all things to do with your mental health and emotional well-being and how to navigate your own mind in these strange times. We're not doctors though, so please don't confuse our advice for medical advice. And even though we come at these topics with a slightly more light-hearted approach, please don't think we trivialise any of the things we talk about, because we certainly don't. But because we come from a different perspective, hence thinking outside the box. Hello, Britt.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks.
I'm just enjoying a lovely coffee.
You mean the coffee from our new, are we allowed to say the brand name of the machine?
We can say the brand name because we're not being sponsored, but if Nespresso are listening and they need a replacement for George Clooney, hello.
Well, we don't have a sponsor for the podcast, do we? Could we legit be sponsored by Nespresso? Is that
Do you know what? I feel we should be sponsored by some sort of coffee company.
I think, yeah, it's not
it.
unrelated, is
No,
it?
exactly.
We're always drinking coffee when we're doing the podcast.
Exactly.
So.
And, you know, you're better looking than George Clooney.
Oh, thanks, baby.
You're welcome.
So are you.
Thanks.
So we're episode 18.
Wow.
We've come of age.
They can drink in this country.
Yeah, episode 18. I can't believe we got here. It's amazing, isn't it?
I can't believe I'm still doing it.
I know. Well, I mean, for you to have the patience and the attention span.
I have the
to keep
attention
doing
span of a gnat.
it. Yeah, pretty much. So well done. Well
Thank
done, you.
I'll just finish halfway through this podcast and walk away.
Yeah, you'll just be gone. Yeah, at some point, listeners, you'll notice it's just me continuing. Well, talking about just me, I'm worried this one's just going to be mostly me. So you've got to make sure you bring the lols on this one.
Oh, I'll do what I can.
Because this
It might be lols depending on how much coffee I've drunk.
slightly agitated
Yeah.
and jumpy lols. Yeah, because we're talking about hypnosis and hypnotherapy.
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun.
This was one you wanted to do.
Well, it's one I wanted to do because it just is relevant to all the things that I talk about, I think, because I am a remedial hypnotist.
You are indeed.
Which is kind of like a hypnotherapist. But
What's the difference?
what's the difference between it? Okay. The reason I don't call myself a hypnotherapist is one of the reasons is because we don't really want therapy. I'm trying to attract people to come and use my services. And in the UK, we're less accepting of some form of therapy. Yeah. And the other
We're
reason
getting better.
we are getting better, to be fair. And I think the awareness that's been raised in recent years has been awesome. And I think it's generally accepted now that we all at some point will require some assistance with our mental health and our kind of emotional upkeep.
That having a therapist is nothing to be ashamed of.
Exactly. And I think when I first called myself a remedial hypnotist, it was slightly different because I started about 10, 11 years ago. And I just felt at the time, maybe it was my lack of understanding, but I felt like I don't want to be attracting people that are saying I need therapy. I'm looking to help people upgrade their patterns of thought.
Through hypnosis.
Well, this is it. And I think everyone in some way would like to upgrade and improve. I say this thing about if I was a genie and I could click my fingers in 10 seconds and something about the way you think, feel or behave would change by this magical spell, then the pressure point there is, for most people, is not, oh, what on earth could I think of to change? The pressure point is, hang on, which thing is the most important thing of all these things I'd like to change?
Could I fly?
Could you fly with hypnosis?
No, as in, are you offering me magical powers?
I think you focused on the genie aspect of that rather than the hypnotherapy
I mean, my
aspect.
first immediate thought, if you want me to be honest, is that you could make Adam Driver appear.
Of course, that would be your first wish, and your second, and your
my third.
But you know what I mean? Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not that the people that I see, I don't consider anyone to be, I don't know, what would you say, ill or broken?
Yeah.
We've just got things that we want to change.
Yeah.
We've got our next upgrade to
Yes.
make, and that's what I'm helping people do, I think.
Do you find, though, that the term hypnotherapist is more understood?
Well, absolutely. To be fair, when people say, oh, remedial hypnotist, what's that? I end up normally saying, like hypnotherapist. So I kind of, that's the framework I put it in. It's like, my insurance.
I'll be honest, I absolutely tell people you're a hypnotherapist.
Well,
because it's just
people
easier.
know what it is. But, my insurance is under hypnotherapy, so it is the same sort of thing. There is an actual difference in what I do from your common or garden hypnotherapist, because I don't use eyes closed, relaxation and trance.
Yes.
My clients are eyes open at all times. We're still using direct hypnotic techniques, but we're not using any trance model. So it is slightly different.
Right.
So it's worth, in my eyes, it's worth differentiating myself from others.
Yeah, because people are going to expect to come and lay on a couch when actually they're on a chair in front of two arcade machines.
Yeah, again with reference to arcade machines that are not on, by the way. You're not going to hear asteroids blasting out whilst we're working.
Me in the corner.
Yeah, Britt, can we have some privacy, please?
What I do want to say is, going back to the remedial hypnotist aspect of it,
Yes.
that's actually how we started talking, isn't it?
It is, funny enough. Yeah, our first interactions on the Book of Face.
So basically, Tim and I met at a business networking event, and it was around the time when I was networking when I was making cakes for people, like birthday cakes and wedding cakes and stuff like that. And Tim was obviously there to get clients. And I was in a little phase where I was just adding everyone from networking on Facebook.
Yes.
I deleted everyone pretty soon after that. But I added a lot of people. And you had recently, so it was after I added you, you changed the banner on your Facebook page to say Timbox Remedial Hypnotist.
Yeah, I had a new logo.
But I didn't read it that way. So I commented saying, I thought this said Timbox Medieval Hypnotist, to which you replied with, that sounds much better.
I think it sounds much more interesting, doesn't it? Can you imagine introducing yourself at networking?
Hi, I'm a medieval hypnotist.
Timbox Medieval Hypnotist.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what the medieval methods of hypnosis would be. It'd probably involve some sort of rack or something like that.
Oh, no, see, I went different. I went making people believe they were living in medieval times.
I think that's a niche job. Isn't it? If that's the client base you're
We know
looking
people
for.
who do Viking, like, reenactments.
That's true,
so
actually.
I reckon you'd be able to find some people.
Yeah.
But that's how we met. That's how we started talking.
Very true, very true.
So sometimes I do call you a medieval hypnotist.
I'm okay with that, you know. I'm not that old, but I'm older than you, but I'm not that old. But I do think as well, it's I don't know, it's interesting because you say you were adding people on Facebook. I have never added someone I haven't met or interacted with on some level where I consider them to be a friend. You're the only person that I accepted the friend request of before I'd even met you or interacted with you.
Well, if I remember, I was wearing a low-cut top in my profile picture, so...
That may have had something to do with it. I mean, I don't like to think of myself as that shallow, but maybe. I'm just deluding myself there.
So, I suppose the big question is, so what is hypnosis?
What is hypnosis? Well, I'm prepared for this question because I'm 10 years in, I still don't like answering that question. Because, to be fair, if you had 100 hypnotists in a room and you asked them to define hypnosis, you would get 100 different definitions. Yeah. Okay, so
not least because what I've learned since being with you is people in the hypnosis industry, they just like to argue between themselves.
There's a lot of arguing.
They always think they're right.
I find it weird that, you know, hypnotherapists should be good at managing emotional well-being, and they lose control quickly. They do when it comes to arguing about hypnosis.
There's always a lot of drama in hypnotherapist groups, just like there is with every industry. So I found this out, actually, completely off on tangent. But obviously, I used to be in the cake business, if you will. Yeah, massive dramas, massive egos, not my good self. You know, there's just always a lot of row and there's a lot of drama. Yeah. And then, you know, when I met you, and it was like, oh, actually, in the hypnosis community, it's the same thing. And then, obviously, we have a friend who's a tattoo artist in the tattoo community. So what I've come to realise, it's not the communities, it's just people.
It's just people.
Just people.
There's drams. Yeah. But the thing is, I have a little pet theory as to why the hypnosis and hypnotherapy community, there are a lot of strong opinions and strong characters. Yeah. And I think because one of the sort of tropes of hypnosis trainings is that a hypnotist has to be confident. They have to be able to direct people and have that confidence so they can take them into hypnosis. And I think a lot of the time, people that are doing hypnosis, they confuse confidence for arrogance.
Right.
And then you end up with people who have just learnt their trade and yet are striding around as if they know everything and as if their way is gospel and that's the only way to do it. And as you go through this, you know, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, isn't it? Well, it's that thing that when you first start out and you've learned what you do, you think you know everything. Yes. So you get very vocal about what you do and about your method and the way you do it. Then as you learn more, you suddenly realise the size, the scope of the discipline, of the topic, and you realise, oh, actually, I know this tiny bit of a bigger thing, and then you get very quiet.
Yeah.
And then eventually, many years down the line, you actually do become an expert because you continue to learn, and then you can then get vocal again. But funny enough, the most vocal people are generally the people who have not done it for so long but haven't yet realised the full scope of the field, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I also have my own theory that this is going to sound incredibly sexist, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Just from my perspective, from my little corner of the world.
This is going to be.
You've no idea what I'm going to say.
I seldom hear you set something up with such care.
Okay, male hypnotists.
Here we go.
And male, you know, so if there are any random male hypnotists also listening to this, you know, I'm probably not talking about you, but if you think I am, maybe I am. I've noticed that in the hypnosis, and I'm not saying hypnotherapy, I'm saying the hypnosis community, you know, the people who want to stand on stage and turn people into Elvis and this, that and the other.
Yes.
From what I have noticed, it's always men who are, how can I put this? On the slightly nerdier scale, on the slightly geekier scale, who maybe weren't popular at school, who maybe weren't. This is savage. You know what I'm saying? So now that it's like, oh, people are looking at me, I am cool. And then they take it to a level where it's like, oh, now you're just being a bit of a prick.
Look, I'm not.
And I'm not talking about you. As you know, because you don't
Thank you so much.
You don't
for
do stage
that.
Hypnosis. I'm very much talking about.
I think
you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
You know who I'm talking about.
Deny that. And I think there is a propensity for us to find people like myself that weren't popular at school that were looking for something to either make us stand out or make us feel more empowered, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and also you've got a lot of the entertainment side of hypnosis. You know, the origins being from magic and entertainment, if that makes sense. And a lot of magicians.
Charles Dickens.
Well, a lot of magicians were quite nerdy guys. You
Yes.
know, they start out and this is it. To be a magician, you've got to be that guy that sits in your room in front of the mirror trying to palm a card and a coin for hours and hours.
It reminds me of the guy from Ant-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy Woo.
There's a fair amount of nerdiness required to do that. Yeah.
Yes.
I think David Blaine's just an anomaly, to be fair.
Well, I don't believe in David Blaine. We've been over this.
That's true. It does not exist.
He doesn't exist.
But yeah, so I think, potentially you have a certain type of person coming, and that is a bit negative, I should say, because I know some wonderful, wonderful people in the industry.
Oh, as do I.
Who I'm so honoured to know, and I'm so pleased to know.
But let's get real. There are some guys that get in it for, shall we say, the wrong reasons.
The sketchier reasons.
The sketch, yes.
Yeah,
that we'll go on to. We'll briefly touch
about
upon
the mind control.
Yeah.
But look, to be fair, you could argue that the woman that empowers herself by doing like an OnlyFans account and, you know, to get their body confidence.
Hang on. How do you know what OnlyFans is?
How do I know? That's a good question. Let's cut this. But the woman that does that, maybe the equivalent of that on the male side is the guy that does hypnosis to get confident about.
Babe, look, if you want to start an OnlyFans page, you don't have to do this big ruse. You can we'll do it. It's cool.
Okay, I'm glad that we've had that conversation.
So what is hypnosis?
So we actually started talking about OnlyFans on the hypnosis episode. I know I said, like, don't just let me talk about hypnosis like a nerd, but you've really taken us off track there. You've really done that job well, I think.
Well, this is how I tell you that I've actually got an OnlyFans account.
Brilliant. This is the big reveal. Right, anyway, so what is hypnosis? I've got my definitions in front of me. As I said, I don't like defining hypnosis. When I started to train hypnotists in my system, I was like trying to write the manual, and I thought, if we're going to do hypnosis, I should actually define hypnosis. And oh my God, I was there for so long trying to get this definition that I was comfortable with, that was all encompassing and yet wasn't ambiguous. And in the end, I gave up. All I did was I grabbed the dictionary definition and the Wikipedia definition.
And put both of that in.
And put both of them in there and said, it might be one of these, who knows?
It might not.
It might not, yeah. Just to be really specific. But anyway, dictionary definition. Hypnosis, the induction of a state of consciousness in which a person apparently loses the power of voluntary action and is highly responsive to suggestion or direction.
Well, that sounds terrifying.
Does sound a bit scary, doesn't it, actually?
Yeah, it sounds a bit sinister.
Well, there's a couple of things there. Yeah, apparently loses the power of voluntary action. That's something we should come on to, definitely, before we finish. And highly responsive to suggestion. Yeah. You
can see why people wouldn't like 100% trust it if they didn't know about it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because I think as well, when we see it in the media, So I'm doing a series of videos on my YouTube channel about hypnosis in films.
Yes.
And it's all sinister mind control, horrific stuff, you know? And people using hypnosis to rob a bank or something like that.
Wait, we can do that?
Well, no, you can't. Spoilers, yeah. But anyway, and so it is portrayed. I mean, the only interesting use of hypnosis in a film is going to be for sinister purposes, isn't it? I suppose. So that's where. Well,
they're not going to be like, here, come have some therapy.
Yeah, that's it. And it all ended brilliantly, and we all got on with a much happier life. Yeah, that's not really going to be the thing, is it? But it is interesting as well. I think the key here is the word apparently loses the power of voluntary action.
Is that the dictionary or the Wikipedia?
That's the dictionary.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I'll give you the Wikipedia if you like.
Off you go.
Because this is what people think. Not that different, actually. Hypnosis is a state of human consciousness. Again, state of consciousness, that's what the dictionary said as well. Involving focused attention and reduced peripheral awareness. Right. And an enhanced capacity for response to suggestion. So
again, the suggestion.
The increased response to suggestion is in both definitions. The interesting one in the Wikipedia one is it talks about a reduced peripheral awareness, a focus.
Right.
And I've talked to a lot of hypnotists who include that as a point of hypnosis, as in a sort of a characteristic of being hypnotized is that you lose interest in what's going on around you and you're focusing purely on what the hypnotist is doing. If that makes sense. Okay. So an example I would give, when my original mentor, John Chase, I was on a training with him and we were in this big room in a hotel and it was really sunny. It was a really sunny day and all the windows were open. And he was doing a hypnosis demo at the front of the room. He had a person hypnotized, and it was sort of quiet because we were all listening intently. And then we didn't know this. There was an Indian wedding in the hotel, and now I'm sure I'm remembering this wrong, right? But what happened in the car park? It was a group of people arriving, like the bride and groom who came back from the wedding, I think. Yeah. But I seem to remember there being elephants and a band, and I literally had that
it was scene, like a scene in Moulin Rouge,
or the scene in Aladdin where where
the genie brings him
exactly where he brings him into town. That's how
Prince Ali, fabulous
exactly that is the exact scene I've transposed into that memory. Yeah, but I'm sure it wasn't. But suffice to say, something really loud happened. A band started playing from nowhere. Yeah, everyone in the room jumped, like literally jumped out of their skin, physically jumped, except for John and the person he was hypnotising. They both remained completely focused on what they were doing, almost oblivious to it. Now, I've known hypnosis before where, you are aware of what, you can hear what's going on around you, but it's not like you suddenly can only hear the voice of the hypnotist like you see in a movie. You suddenly go into this strange land where it's all just dark and sparse except for the hypnotist.
Like the void.
What, in Stranger Things?
Yeah.
A bit like that, that's what people imagine it to be, I think. But you can hear it. You just maybe don't have as much focus on it. You're not really paying attention to it. Yeah, if that makes sense. I get you. No, that does make sense. So there is a potentially a guy called Jeff Stevens, a really good hypnotist in America. He's actually died in the last few years. But he used to talk about shrinking the thinking. So you zone in more and more on a fixed focus point, being the instructions of the hypnotist. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So you learned hypnosis, and then kind of branched out into hypnotherapy, and then created your own method of it, as opposed to just going straight in at a hypnotherapy level.
Yeah, my interest was it was a strange time in my life. The same year, I believe I learnt some magic tricks. I learnt to juggle, and I then saw a weekend training you in hypnosis.
I think it's called a midlife crisis.
I think it might be, actually. I believe it was around that time I bought my spiders as well. So there were things going on that maybe I look back on and think, I'm glad I'm through that phase.
I am too.
But my interest was just in learning something interesting, because remember, I did philosophy at A level. Yes. So at university rather. So I was interested in the more cerebral thoughts. Yeah. And then I went into, obviously, as you do, plumbing, which was not my calling.
No.
I was.
If you haven't listened to it's episode 4 or 5, I can't remember. It's Tim's story. Do go have a listen to that and find out how he became a plumber, how the man who looks least like a tradesman that I've ever known or met in my life became a tradesman.
I got very tired of arriving at people's houses to fix their plumbing and them say, "You don't look like a plumber." Funny enough, I don't feel like one.
What were you expecting me to have a big tap for a head?
Yeah. That would be terrifying. Or just dressed like Super Mario. Obviously, that's what they were expecting.
Very small and bouncy.
Anyway, Where was I at? Oh yeah, so I learned him just a weekend of hypnosis training, and it was just it totally blew my mind. I've got to be honest, it was one of those real, I don't know, those really impactful moments in your life. And I remember ringing my partner at the time on the way back home, saying, "Oh my God, I've got magic powers!" I can't believe it. And it was just that, you know, a real.
And she was like, "All right."
Yeah, they weren't not interested, did they? But it was just, but it wasn't for therapy. It was just, you know, I had my friend Gemma. She used to let me practice my hypnosis on her. The foolish mortal, but you know, but it wasn't anything. I was just sticking her to things and getting her to forget her name and stuff like that. It wasn't really anything groundbreaking. You know? But I remember once when she was, I had a hand stuck to the table.
Yes.
And she looked at me and said, "Look, why don't you do something useful with this?" And I remember saying, "I believe I am." Just vaguely at the hand stuck to the table. And she said, "No." She said, "I'm getting married and I don't want to be biting my nails. So could you help me stop biting my nails?"
Yeah.
And I had no idea how to do that.
Brilliant.
And so we just totally bluffed it. I did something.
So instead of going and doing some training, you just thought you'd
well,
figure
you know,
out as
it's
you went
like,
along.
well, let's have a go, shall we? And we did it. And when I just did it like I'd been taught with the kind of limited knowledge of hypnosis that I had, which was just hypnotize the person, tell them they don't bite their nails anymore, wake them up, and you get on with your life. And she looked at me afterwards and she said, "Well, that obviously didn't work." And I was like, "To be fair, you're probably right. Let's just get on with our lives, shall we? And never speak of it again." And we did that. But then 2 weeks later, she came up to me and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, Tim, by the way, all my nails have grown back." And she hadn't bitten them since the session. And I should say as well, she was a really, you know, what we might call a chronic nail biter, where she had, you know, when you can see they've been bitten back to the quick, you know, where they really...
Oh, it makes me feel funny.
Yeah, well, the thing is, as well, she didn't realise when she was doing it, except when she started to taste blood, you know.
So interestingly, obviously, I think I've spoken about this on the podcast, but I have what would be described as an obsessive compulsion, or however it is categorised or whatever.
Yeah.
In that I pick the skin off of my lips.
Oh yeah.
Which is very gross, and I'm sorry if you're eating, but it's a thing that I've done since I can early remember, so probably like 4 or 5 kind of thing. And I would kind of get stuck in it and I wouldn't realise I've done it until I could taste blood. So I completely relate to that, because you fall into this thing of you don't realise you're doing it. So I would do it when I was stressed, I would do it when I was bored, I would do it when I was tired, it would just be my go-to thing. Yeah,
this is exactly the point of hypnosis and hypnotherapy, is because that is a subconscious pattern that you're running. You're not consciously, deliberately doing it.
I'm not going, "Oh, I'm going to sit down and pick my lips for an hour." It's just, you looked over at me on the sofa and I would just be covered in blood.
And the funny thing is, I would know that you were pondering something, you were ruminating, you were stressing about something, because it was your go-to response to that sort of thought. So we all have those things as well. Let's face it.
As a side note, since my braces have got put on,
you can't do anything.
I can't do it. I haven't done it. It's been great. There's been 2 times in my life since I was a toddler that I haven't been able to do it. Once when I used to have acrylic fake nails, because you just can't. And then obviously I couldn't have those when I was making cakes. So that time when I had acrylic nails, now when the braces are on, it's much harder to get purchased. So I just don't do it anymore.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The things we're doing that our subconscious has attached meaning to and purpose to, but they don't have that purpose anymore.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we start them at a time when we are confused, helpless, when we're a child, when we're just looking
anxious, nervous, worried.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. and we get this strategy, this comfort strategy. But then as we get older, we just keep doing it, and we fail to notice that maybe I don't need that sort of comfort anymore, because now I have agency, you know, I have autonomy, I have power in the world. I don't have to sit there helpless wondering what life will throw me anymore.
If I want, I can just go to a supermarket, buy a sharing Colin the Caterpillar and eat it all to myself, and there is nobody to stop me.
Precisely. What a great freedom to have.
Joys of being an adult.
Exactly.
I remember being a kid and just thinking, "Oh, when I'm grown up, I'm going to do whatever I want, eat what I want," and I do.
I thought there was going to be a story, and then you realise, no, you do. But so the thing that and that was originally what sent me down the path of hypnotherapy, though, when we just stopped Gemma biting her nails for a wedding. So
then you went down the sort of hypnotherapy route, and I suppose the question I want to ask, that I know the answer to, but I want to ask for the podcast, because obviously people listen to us to also hear about how we feel about things to do with mental health and things to do with emotional well-being.
Yeah.
So can hypnotherapy, or your version of hypnotherapy, what you do with clients, help people with mental health conditions?
Absolutely. In fact, you could argue that's precisely what hypnotherapy is looking to do in every single instance. Yeah. Because remember, when we say mental health, we're not talking about mental illness. You know, we're not talking about you are brain damaged. We're not talking about you are broken or malfunctioning. We're talking about maintaining a positive mental health, you know, looking after yourself and getting rid of the blockages, the things that hold you back. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the thing that has constantly amazes me about what I get to do for a living, is seeing people change the way they think and the way they behave in very short order, you know, a very short amount of time. And we can do that because we're dealing directly with the part of your mind that is running that particular pattern, that particular strategy, that particular response.
Yeah.
Any sort of therapy, its aim, its purpose is to reprogram your subconscious patterns of thought. That's it. No matter what therapy you're doing, whether you're doing a talk therapy, whether it's counseling, psychotherapy, whether it's CBT, whether it's something like Reiki or something like that, you know, the aim is that you shift and change and upgrade your automatic responses, not so that you're constantly having to consciously manage your responses. So, for example, your lips, you could become aware of doing it and stop yourself forcibly. Yes. But you probably have tried that before. And what happens is 5 minutes later, you notice your fingers are at your lips again. Yeah. So that's a constant conscious management of it. Our aim is to stop the part of you that's bringing your fingers to your lips from doing that. Yeah. By recognizing the futility or the lack of purpose behind that pattern or that response now. So it's always, absolutely. I think one of the great things about hypnosis and hypnotherapy is that's the kind of the magic that it releases, is your ability to learn, to grow, and to change.
And it can help with anything really. Like I know when you do your workshops, you know, back in the day I used to facilitate on your workshops. Now I don't care. So
you're less inclined to sit in a room listening to me chat for an hour.
Yeah, you know, honeymoon phase, wasn't it? We're married now. We've been married for years.
It was that time when you could just hear my voice talking about anything, and just
now
think,
I'm like, oh, he's talking again.
He's saying that same joke again. Yeah, okay.
I could do your workshop. I mean, I could host it. Absolutely.
I think you could. You would know every single.
I know every single word to it. Like I can hear you. Like, spoiler alert, where we live, the walls and the floors aren't that thick. So when I'm upstairs, I can sometimes hear Tim on the phone, and I'll know what he's going to say before he says it, and I'm mouthing along upstairs to it.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing.
And sometimes I text you.
I don't want to suggest that I haven't updated my material for the last 10 years, but yeah, you know, there's. And this is the thing as well. Learning hypnosis, you know, if I'm training hypnotists or if I'm working with clients, it is a very simple and direct method. So it isn't like you're going to need months and years of training to understand the fundamentals. You know, I learnt the fundamentals of hypnosis in a weekend. Yeah, okay, the therapeutic side of it takes a little bit longer. There's specialist trainings and that kind of thing. But it's not, because it is by nature uncomplicated. Yeah, it is deliberately kept simple. And because a lot of the time, what we're going through, the reason we're going through it and the reason we've got stuck is because we've got lost in our complexity. Yeah. And that's why oftentimes people don't get much joy with talk therapies or counselling. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there are times when that is perfect, that is brilliant, that's what we need. But I think the times when it isn't as effective for us, it's because we're just going around in those same loops that we've been going around, and we've got lost in our detail. Yes. Rather than doing what would be effective for making change, which is to back up a little bit, look at it from the outside, and develop just a better, simpler strategy of how to deal with life.
Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds good. Well, hopefully. The thing as well that I hear people ask you all the time, which I think is a really funny question, because I can understand why people ask it to a certain extent. Yeah. But from someone who's been married to someone who does it for years, yes. Does hypnotherapy work? And I feel like if it didn't, like, our house wouldn't get paid for. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm like, we wouldn't be, we wouldn't be able to live our life.
It's funny, when people ask me that, it's like, so what are you suggesting then? Yeah. Are you suggesting, because, you know, clearly I make a living from it, yeah? This is what I mean. Are you suggesting, what they're actually saying is, so Tim, are you actually a con man? Is that what you're doing? So and
obviously you don't tell them yes at that point.
Well, exactly, no. My standard response now when people say, hypnotherapy, does it work? I'm like, well, no, but don't tell anyone. Because it's like, it's a silly question, but it's an understandable question. Do you know what I mean?
Do you know what? Okay, talking of silly questions, I get more annoyed with this sort of stuff than you do. So when One of the main reasons I think I stopped telling people you were a hypnotist and started telling people you were a hypnotherapist is because, don't get me wrong, I'm a funny girl. I can appreciate a joke. But what I can't appreciate is the same joke being told by people who think they're funny over and over again for years. And what I mean by that is if I hear one more person say to you oh, don't look at his eyes, look around his eyes, don't look at his eyes. I want to, honestly, I hear that and I want to choke slam someone to the floor. I get rich. You know, it reminds me very much of what I'm getting very recently. Obviously, my name is Britt. I'm aware there's a streaming service at the moment with the same name. Guess what? You won't be the first person to tell me, and I won't appreciate you telling me. It feels like that to me. Yeah. You know, you get the whole, oh, does he hypnotise you? And like, I just despise it. I suppose
it's a little bit like when somebody says they're a comedian and you're like, oh, go on,
tell us a joke.
Say something funny.
Yeah, exactly. Or, do you know, or when I was making cakes and I'd go somewhere and it'd be like, oh, did you bring in a cake? Oh yeah, hang on, I've just got a whole Victoria sponge in my bag. Let me just get it out. It's just, as I say, I know I get more annoyed about this stuff than you do, but
yeah, you get more annoyed about most stuff.
But like, how do you deal with that, I suppose?
Well, I think, look, I was aware right from the word go that there are misconceptions around what I do.
Yes.
I get that, yeah, because here's the thing. So when I was a plumber, I know you're going to meet dozens of plumbers in your life, yeah. You're probably only going to meet one hypnotist, or maybe less than one. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, not me personally. I know far too many.
I know. When we were networking together, it was rife with hypnotherapists everywhere. You couldn't turn a corner without bumping into one. But generally, it's not a profession we come into contact with very often. Yeah. And this was another reason why I said hypnotist rather than hypnotherapist when I was networking.
Oh, because you made a distinction.
Well, if I say hypnotherapist, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go and talk to the mortgage advisor, I think. You know,
because they'll
be more interested, probably, you know. If I say hypnotist, there's like, oh, I don't think I've ever met a hypnotist, even though they've just walked over from talking to the other hypnotherapist in the room. Do you know what I mean? Because it instantly puts you in a different category, yeah?
Well, that's because people hear the word hypnotist and they think things, you know, like my good mate Darren Brown.
Your good mate Darren Brown, who you...
So, let me tell you the Darren Brown story, listeners. We went to go see a Darren Brown show. This was, what is this, 5-6 years ago now?
Years a while ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
And
I love Darren Brown. I like going to see his shows.
Yeah, Tim very much. If anyone knows Darren Brown, Tim would very much like to meet him.
I'd like that'd be awesome.
But yeah, we went to see him and...
Can I just say, if I met Darren Brown, I'd be like, oh, don't look at his eyes, don't look around his eyes.
Oh my God. And do you know what? He'd punch you and I'd be there for it. I'd join in.
It'd be an honour to get punched by him.
So we went to go see Darren Brown, and if you've ever seen or watched a Darren Brown show, you know that sometimes he will select people from the audience. Yeah. And I have this tendency to be picked for things.
You do. This is as soon as you're up there, I'm like, of course it's her. And we're in a room. We're in a theatre of 2,000 people. Of course, the one person on stage is Britt.
Hi. It just happens, and you know, I get picked for things. I get chosen for things, and like I get picked on by people. Like I get it. It's okay. And also you might be like, oh, it's, you know, because you got bright red hair. I can promise you, this has been happening. Yeah. All of my life, never depending on what colour hair I've got. So it just is a thing that happens. Anyway, so it was and it was really random, wasn't it? It was like, stand up if you follow me on Twitter or something. I think it started. Excuse me. Yeah. And then you had to like tweet a word and you had to do this thing, you had to do this thing. And he was eliminating people sort of like one by one until it was just me and this other person standing up. Yeah. And we both had written down words on bits of paper that he couldn't see. Mm. And then the other person sat down. And by this point, when it was just the two people standing up, did you know it was going to be me?
Yeah, I did. Well, I think when it was said, I need someone from the audience, I knew it was going to be you.
So I went on stage, and I honestly can't remember like the long and the short of the trick, but I do know that he had to basically guess the word that I'd written down that he couldn't see, and he picked it out of a book. Yeah. And it worked. It was obviously worked. It was great. It was wonderful. And I went and sat down, and I had a very good time. Yeah. Now I can remember in the break, because the trick with me happened, and then it was a break. Yeah. And in the break, someone tapped me on the shoulder who was sitting behind us. I remember when you could touch random strangers, tap them on the shoulder. Someone was behind me, and they said, so, okay, are you part of it then? Like, they weren't having...
Are you part of the act?
Are you part of the act? They weren't having that it was just an organic trick that happened.
That amazes me that people still think at
That
Darren
I'm a
Brown
plant.
shows or magic shows, they plant people in the audience.
Yeah.
Now, I know old hypnosis shows in the 80s, in America in particular,
They used to do that.
there was a couple of stage hypnotists who would actually have stooges in the audience, but they'd still get people up, and the stooges were really there to promote a better response from the people that were on stage.
Absolutely.
But it still seems like a crazy thing when you think about all the shows you're going to do, all the performances, and you've got to get different people each time. But to be fair, I get it, because what other people don't know what's going on. But I went with a mate to one of Darren Brown's shows once.
Okay.
And he's really interested in hypnosis and the mind and everything like that. And he was mortified when I explained how they'd done one of the tricks, because he thought it was complete mind manipulation and it was just kind of a magic trick. That's the thing with Darren Brown, though. It doesn't stop me loving what he does, the fact that I kind of know a lot of how it's done, because I've looked into it.
You've looked behind the curtain.
Well, exactly, and I just, because I tell you what I love about him, because I'm not a great fan of stage hypnosis. I've got no problem with it. My mentor is a stage hypnotist. I can appreciate it, but it's not like, oh, let's go and see a good stage hypnosis show, because I've kind of seen so many of them now that they don't, and they're all kind of the same. Darren Brown uses hypnosis on stage in a way that nobody else does. He uses it as the misdirect for his magic trick.
Yes.
Which I think is genius.
Also, doesn't he do this, not to get this podcast to be a whole hour on Darren Brown, but doesn't he do this to get around the you can't do hypnosis on TV or something like that?
Well, he does. He will say, you wwon't be hypnotized.
Yeah.
But what's happening now is we're going to put you in a trance. and it's like, but again, because hypnosis is so sketchily defined in terms of what actually is it, he can just say, this isn't hypnosis. Yeah. And guess what? As far as, any sort of insurance or legalities are concerned, he hasn't done hypnosis. We were at a show, and he said, right, this isn't going to hypnotise you. And a massive watch starts swinging from side to literally the size of the back of the stage. It's like a massive man-sized watch swinging backwards and forwards,
Yeah.
It was, it was just,
Well, then the question I've got then is, because obviously if he does shows with thousands of people in it and he's picking people out and this, that and the other, can anyone be hypnotised?
Okay, that's a really good question. And that's another one that I really get asked very often, to be fair. Different hypnotists will have differing opinions on this.
Oh, look, shock horror.
Surprise. Wouldn't it be nice if you could ask me a hypnosis question? I could have a categorical yes or no answer. I personally believe not everyone can be. Right. Because I know not everyone will be.
Right.
I've seen...
You can't be, though, can you?
That's it. I'm a rubbish responder. If you try and hypnotise me, I feel like there's something cold and dead about my brain and the way it works. But I'm just not a good responder, whereas you are a fantastic responder.
Yes.
Yeah, you go under like that. He said, clicking his fingers.
And nothing happens.
Yeah. But you're like high level responder.
Is it because I'm imaginative? I was going to say imaginative.
It could be, but here's the thing. I don't necessarily think there are hard and fast rules about what makes somebody a good responder. No. There are certain theories about bits of your brain being bigger than other people's bits of their brains.
My brain is quite big.
Massive brain. Yes, but not for maths.
No, that part shriveled up and died a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I know the sort of people that won't be able to be hypnotised, and it'll be the people that come up to you when we're at events or anything and say, oh, you can't hypnotise me.
Well, they're challenging then. So it's that's one of two people, by the way. Yeah. It could be the person that is determined to prove they can't be hypnotised. In that case, if you make it a competition, you'll win, because it's your mind we're dealing with, not mine. It's like if you put up the barriers, we won't get anywhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or it could be the person who is challenging me because they really want to be hypnotised, and it's the kind of kid in a playground way of saying, "Oh, go on, have a go, hypnotise me," because it's slightly easier to say, "I bet you can't," than to say, "Please, can you hypnotise me?"
Yeah, I get you.
So, but everyone I think is different, and there is an argument that says everyone can do it, because after all we're really tapping into is our ability to learn and adopt new patterns of thought. But in my experience, in the thousands of clients I've seen over the last 10 or so years, there are some that simply won't respond to the way we're working.
Right.
This is the exact reason why I do an initial free consultation.
That makes sense.
Because I used to say when I was networking, I don't charge people for not hypnotizing them. and I need to work out that you can respond to the method that I used for a start.
Yeah.
To get the result we want.
You have quite a good success rate though.
Oh yeah, 9 out of 10 people can do it in some capacity. Absolutely. Right. You know, they can respond in some way so that, yep, we've got a good chance of getting a good result here. But I always think there's going to be that 1 out of 10 that just, there's nothing happening. There's no way of working with them in terms of the things that I do.
But if someone's listening to this and they're contemplating hypnosis or hypnotherapy to help with their mental health conditions or something that's bothering them, not to be put off by the fact that some people can't, because unless you try, you won't know.
Oh, absolutely. And as I say, it's much more likely that you can. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I've seen certain things, I just don't think I could do it. Yeah, that's a universal common thought from everyone that I see. That it's very rare that somebody says, oh, I'm absolutely certain I'll be able to be hypnotized. You know, I know I'm going to respond great. And normally that only happens if they've been to a hypnotist before and been able to be hypnotized. Most people assume, oh, I'll be that 1 out of 10 that can't. And, you know, but only 1 out of 10 are that one that can't, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you know?
So it's such a small number that it's worth having a go, because most people, you know, may do a free consultation or something like that. So you've really got nothing to lose.
Oh, absolutely. And this is what I've always had to accept with what I do, that unless we can get a starting point, there's no point in going ahead. And, you know, I don't necessarily want to take people's money for them to finish whatever work we do and say, oh, it just didn't work. Yeah. Better we find that out beforehand, you know?
And I think, you know, one of the things that some people might be wary of as well, like, you know, can you get stuck in it, or can they be made to do things they don't want to do? You know, things like that.
Okay, so there's different questions there. Getting stuck in hypnosis, no. But then again, I've never tried to get someone stuck in hypnosis forever. You know, what happens is it's your mind we're dealing with. Yeah. So the classic scenario is that you get hypnotized and then the hypnotist has a heart attack and dies, and then you are stuck forever in hypnosis. Yeah, that don't happen. There's a Jim Carrey sketch actually from his early days where he's on stage with a stage hypnotist. Yeah. The stage hypnotist turns him into a chicken and then falls off the stage and dies, and then the rest of the sketch.
And thus Jim Carrey has become a chicken for the rest of the
sketch. The rest of the sketch is about him dealing with life as a chicken. and it's a funny sketch.
Why is it always a chicken?
I don't know.
Why is it, you can turn me into a chicken? Why a chicken?
That's another thing when I say I'm a hypnotist. Yeah. Oh, you're going to turn me into a chicken?
You should just say yes.
Yeah, well.
Or I'd be like, don't have to, mate, you already are.
Nice. Hey. It's like, I think we need to address why you wish to become a chicken. Yes. But no, you can't get that, because either one or two things will happen. If you're actually doing trance hypnosis and the hypnotist in some way checks out of the game, you will either fall asleep. Yeah. And you know what happens after you fall asleep? At some point you wake up. Right. Or you'll just come out of hypnosis, because a bit of your subconscious will say, hang on, please stop talking.
Something's not right here.
Yeah, I would hope if it was me, you'd be like, hang on, I can hear signs of distress, and it sounds like the hypnotist is rolling around on the floor clutching his chest, or you know, something like that. Yeah. Okay, I've got an example here that should illustrate what I mean. I'm going back to my friend Gemma. Used to practice hypnotizing her. There have been 2 separate occasions which I think illustrate the times when your mind will just bring you out of whatever experience you're in. Okay. The first one, I was hypnotizing her around here, at my house. There was a guy came off his bike outside on the road.
Off his motorbike?
Motorbike, yeah. There was a big screeching of wheels, crashing, etc. And the person that was in the room with us, I think it was one of our mates, ran over to the window and said, oh my God, he's come off his bike. And there was a kerfuffle. But Gemma was at this time hypnotized. Yeah. And she remained, you know, eyes closed, focusing on what I was saying. And I remained focused on her. Yes. And
Ever the professional,
of course. The person that had noticed the person come off their bike ran outside and helped him, and he was all right. And it turns out it was just his pride that was bruised. And then I sort of woke Gemma out of hypnosis and said, "Oh, I thought you'd open your eyes and come out of it." And she said, "I was trying to, but I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't move." Yeah, because her subconscious was still invested.
It was like, "No, we're doing this right now."
Exactly. It was focused on what I was saying, because probably, I think, her subconscious was reasoning, if I need to come out of this, then there's people around me that can manage whatever situation's occurring.
She was in a safe environment.
Yeah, and I think there was a bit of a thinking we'd set it up just to see what would happen, because it was around my experimentation phases.
Yes.
But then it was a couple of weeks later. I was working around her house with her, doing another practice session, and the same situation. She was hypnotized. I was going about my business of doing whatever we were doing, and suddenly she opened her eyes and said, "I've got to sort that out." And she got up, walked all the way down to the end of the corridor, opened the door to the spare room where the cat was scratching the carpet.
Oh, she could hear it.
Yeah, she'd put the cat away just to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
And I didn't even hear that.
Right.
But her subconscious said, that's more important than whatever this idiot is talking to me about right now. And so I
think that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of the time. Yeah. But I think your subconscious decides what's important. And if the hypnotist is always trying to manage the situation so that the hypnotist remains the most important thing for your subconscious to focus on.
Yes.
But don't think you can get stuck, because you can come out of it any time.
Yeah.
The times when you can't come out of it are often just the times you don't realise you can.
Right.
Or you don't realise you're allowed to, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And then the whole idea of, can you be made to do things you don't want to? Your subconscious is always running the show. Okay, that's a given. Yeah. Whether you're hypnotized or not, your subconscious is presenting the options to you. Yeah. So this is why we often feel out of control, because our subconscious is steering us in a direction that we consciously think isn't the best one.
Yeah.
And it could be doing that for a number of reasons: old beliefs, old experiences, just old ideas that now don't apply, but your mind is still running. This is why people come to see me, by the way. Yeah.
Yes.
But there is this thing where if the hypnotist becomes the person directing your subconscious to the point where your subconscious is saying, I'll follow along with what you're saying. Yeah. So, for example, a stage hypnotist sets up the framework. When you are hypnotized,
you are a chicken.
You will obey every command I give you. I had I was talking to somebody at networking once. They were telling me about the time they were on stage with Paul McKenna, and they said, I've been on stage with Paul McKenna twice. I said, oh, tell me about that. I bet that was fun. And they said, well, it started fun, but then it stopped being fun about halfway through during the intermission, when I was still hypnotized and pretending to be a cheerleader in the bar and all that sort of thing, because they do sketches in the intermission, the stage hypnotist. Anyway, and she said, by the end of it, I was done with it. I just wanted to stop, but I couldn't stop doing what the hypnotist was telling me to do. Yeah. And I said, oh, okay. So it became, a little bit unpleasant by the end of it. She said, yeah, I was just sort of tired of it. I said, but you said you did it twice. And she said, yeah, well, I went home and I was thinking about it. I thought, surely I could have stopped, but maybe I just didn't want to, because I didn't want to spoil his show. Yeah, I was going along with it, just to, not to be that
making
person.
Him feel better.
Exactly. So she
haven't we all done that, women?
Brilliant. So she went back the next day with the express purpose of volunteering again, but this time not doing what the hypnotist did. I said, okay, how did that work out? She said, yeah, same thing happened. And I don't think that was because Paul McKenna had control of her mind. No. But I think that's because her mind had accepted the framework that the only option I have right now is to follow the instructions of the hypnotist. Okay. Yeah. So it's one of those weird things. The best way I've ever heard it answered, when somebody asked, it was at a conference. There's a guy called James Tripp who does a lot of eyes open hypnosis as well. One of my contemporaries, if you like. And he was asked, can you bring yourself out of hypnosis? Yeah. And he answered, most succinct, best answer, yes, you can, but you don't always realise you can. Right, okay. And that's when we don't come out of it, because we don't realise we can. No. Yeah.
But it's safe, isn't it?
Oh God, hypnosis is safe. There's nothing inherently dangerous about hypnosis. There's nothing where you can be hypnotised, and as a result of being hypnotised, something bad happens to you, or something bad happens to your mind.
No, because there's obviously that. Do you remember that? Going back to Darren Brown, there was that one where he had to do bad things, and he was making him do bad things from the start, and it started really small, and it was like swap the veggie flag for the meat flag on the sausage rolls, right. And then it was like up to robbing a bank or something. Like
there was, but look, you got to remember, a lot of what Darren Brown does, it's magic tricks,
it's tomfoolery.
It's tomfoolery. Yeah, it's shenanigans. Yeah, it's not the thing you got to remember about Darren Brown. The way he says it's done.
That isn't how it's done.
You can absolutely rule out that's how it's being done.
He's a liar.
He is, yeah, exactly. So
I think for me, the thing I wanted to get across mostly in this episode is if people wanted to use hypnosis or hypnotherapy as a way of helping them, to know that it's not all, you know, chickens and lying down with your eyes closed and not being in control, that actually, you know, you're very much in control, and especially the way you do it, which is more of, you know, an eyes open, you're completely sort of present in the moment kind of thing.
This is it. There's not anything that I'm doing to the people.
No.
We're basically encouraging that bit of your mind, your subconscious, to get involved in updating and upgrading the way you're responding. And that can be done eyes open, wide awake, just as effectively as it could be done relaxed and asleep. You know? When you said, is there anything dangerous about hypnosis? There's nothing inherently dangerous about it at all. There are things, you know, people will quote things. So in the 80s, for example, there was a lot of stories about false memory syndrome.
Yes.
Where people would be
planting false memories. And
so in the 80s, a particular approach, hypnotherapy wise, regression is a valid approach. Regressing you back to the thing that initially caused you to have this, I don't know, fear, anxiety, concern, all that sort of thing. Regressing you back and reframing that so that you can look at it with new eyes, with adult eyes, and say, okay, that's not what I thought it was. I can let that go, kind of thing. Now, it's a valid technique, but in the 80s, there were certain hypnotherapists or a certain school of thought that said, okay, if you're presenting, for example, with X or Y symptoms, that probably means you suffered some form of abuse as a child. Well, this is the thing. It was kind of a misapplication of psychology to hypnotherapy, right? And then
that sounds terrifying.
Well, this is it. And then you would have hypnotherapists regressing people back to cause, but not just regressing them to see what they remembered or what they'd been through, but literally leading them there.
Right.
You know? And you've got to be careful when you're doing hypnosis, because all you've got to say is, okay, so you're back in your bed as a child. Is there anyone else in the room with you? You know, all you've got
Make sure no one's following you.
Well, exactly. You say that and you've implied that there is.
This is why I think any kind of regression, I don't like it.
You're not a fan of it, are you?
Absolutely not. No, but then, you know, I've had a very traumatic life.
Yeah, and the good news is...
the last thing I would want is to go back to that trauma, you know?
Yeah, so this was the problem. You had people coming back from this hypnosis with memories that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then families being broken apart because apparently granddad did this, you know. And mercifully, we don't do that anymore.
No.
Yeah, and I've never done regression at all. In my
I don't
life,
think
you know,
it's safe.
And I don't. That's the only thing. But from day one, I was taught that's the only thing that potentially, if mishandled, could lead to a negative experience. Yeah. So because memory, but we understand it differently now.
Yeah.
Back then, we thought when we looked back at our memories, we were looking at movies. We were literally reviewing the material, what happened. That's not what's happening at all. We're actually remembering our last remembering.
Yeah, remembering the last time we remembered it.
Effectively, we're imagining what we think happened.
See, if I think too deeply into that, I go into existential crisis. I don't need to be thinking about that. I just want to as well just address something, more the elephant in the room, shall we say? You know,
go on.
You are a hypnotherapist, you're a hypnotist, you help people with sort of their mental health and things like that. Obviously, I have had my own struggles with mental health.
Yeah.
But because what I don't want is people to be listening to this and say, oh, well, you know, his wife's depressed, you know, or has had depression, you know, so but I personally think that if you are seeing someone on a therapeutic basis, seeing, you know, your partner, your soulmate and your best friend might not be the best thing.
Well, there is this thing in counselling where you're not really allowed to have two separate relationships, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So we have a husband and wife relationship, so we couldn't then be therapist and client.
No.
Now,
I guess I didn't want people listening to this and think, oh, well, he can't be that good. His wife's depressed.
Well, no, to be fair, though, I think it's not exactly the same with what we do, because we are able to work with people that we know and that we care about.
And you help me every day, but in a husband capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
But this is the thing, and I personally, when I'm training practitioners, I don't rule out the possibility of working with your spouse or working with your mother or your siblings, because you'll know if it's appropriate or not. whether you feel like you're because it's not counseling, it's not talk therapy. You don't have to tell me your life story. We just have to work out what the pattern of thought is we want changed and what we need to address to allow that pattern of thought to change. Yeah. So sometimes it requires a lot of talking. Sometimes it requires virtually no talking at all. But the reason we don't do a lot of hypnosis together is because that's not what you want from me.
No.
You know, it's like
I just want to moan about stuff sometimes. You're like, let's try and fix it. I'm like, let's not. Shut up.
But this is the thing. So I had to learn that fairly quickly. That, you know, me barreling in with, I'm Tim Box, I shall fix everything about you. You know, that's not the attitude that you wanted from me.
No.
Yeah, you wanted assistance, emotional support, rather than let's fix you, Britt. You know, and so it's about context, I think, and it's about what does that person mean to you in the context of your relationship.
Well, because you train a lot of people, and people who are listening to this might not know. I am a trained hypnotist.
You are indeed, he said with trepidation.
I am a trained. I did Tim's hypnotist workshop again back in the day when I enjoyed just spending casual time with him talking about hypnosis, and now.
So to answer this question to me then, how long did it take you to learn to hypnotize somebody?
Oh, it was in the day, wasn't it?
It was
that day.
It was a one day. You were doing it by lunchtime. Is what they call. Yeah. So this
and then that evening at the pub.
Yes, that was not not your proudest moment, I feel.
Oh, I'm fine. I stuck someone's hand to a table and then forgot how to unstick them, so I had to call Tim.
So yeah, I taught Britt how to do a hypnotic hand stick, so stick someone to the table, and then I got a call from a drunk Britt that evening saying, "Tim, I just did the hand stick on somebody," and I was like, "Oh, cool. Where are they now?" And you're like, I think they're still stuck to the table. And so I had to get you to hang up the phone and go and unstick them.
I'd like to point out I am since retired, so I don't do these things anymore.
That was your swan song. That was and I'm out.
I'm done. I did the one thing.
Drops
I don't need to do it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is. This is what I mean. It's a vast discipline to learn. It's not like I thought you needed years of psychology to learn how to hypnotize somebody. Turns out you need a good morning of direct training to learn how to do it. But don't get me wrong. The people that you're seeing as practitioners, anyone that goes to see hypnotherapists,
haven't done just a one day.
They've had more training than that, and also they are more inclined to wish to help people rather than stick them to stuff.
Yes, why are you saying that? Looking at me like that pointedly.
Well,
I mean, what? It's not that I don't care about people. I do, but you know, I'm not a therapist.
No, exactly. Yeah, well, this is it. It's not your calling. That's fine. You know? That's okay, isn't it? Yeah. It's a very deep dive subject, and I could talk about this.
Do you know what? Hours. I know you can.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question before we wrap up.
Go on then. Give
me the strangest thing you have helped someone with in a hypnosis fashion.
Right, that's a really good question. I've had a few. I don't think I've had as strange things as other people that I've met who have some amazing stories about what journeys they've gone on. But then I don't work with things like past life regression or spirit.
So you've never had Anne Boleyn sitting there on your sofa?
No, I haven't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I went through that phase of offering past life regression and doing a few.
Do you remember the spooky night we went to?
Yeah, that's what I did. I did a thing. So somebody asked me to do some past life regression at an evening at their health.
It was
club.
like a health clinic.
It's a health clinic. And I was like, I don't really do past life regressions. I don't really believe in it. And she said, that's a shame, because I was going to get a medium in as well to do some readings, and I was going to call it Spooky Night. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely in if it's called Spooky Night, because that sounds like exactly a piece of me. And so I've done some past life regression and been trained in it and everything.
But you don't believe in it?
It's not. Yeah, no. It didn't feel right at the start of the session for me to be saying, by the way, I don't believe in this. I don't believe in any of this, by the way.
So what strange things you got?
Okay, strangest. There's a couple of things that jump out in my mind. One was, it was just an inquiry. A lady said, can you stop me being obsessed with the 80s? And I'm like...
To which you replied.
Well, I said, is that a problem? I mean, have I got this problem now as well, you know?
I mean, you are firmly stuck in the 80s.
That's like looking over at my Space Invaders and Asteroids machine.
And your Stranger Things mug.
Well, exactly. And she was like, I said, is it a problem for you? And she was like, no, it's not, is it? It was almost like she just needed someone.
She talked herself out of it.
That's it. I said, look, just ditch the leg warmers and the perm. But, you know, apart from that, no. But it was, and that was, but we never did anything because it was just a casual inquiry at a networking event. But the strangest thing I've actually helped someone with, they wanted to, what would you call it? Reactivate their deeper subconscious so that they could once again communicate with, beings that they referred to as star beings. I can, yeah, I mean, everyone can hear that sigh. And it was, do you know what? It was a really successful session. Now,
how do you know?
Well,
though?
okay, because the client told me that I think the story was basically that when she was younger, she had lots of, she talked to these star, and she was very spiritual, obviously very spiritual.
Obviously, yeah.
And she'd kind of, in her older, more adult life, where people had told her, that's weird, you shouldn't be doing that, she'd kind of shut off that bit of her mind. Aww. And she just wanted to access it again.
I am of the firm belief that as long as you're not hurting anyone,
exactly,
you crack on, you do what you want.
Exactly.
You speak to those star beings, you be amazing.
And I should say, it wasn't like she was psychotic or anything like that. It wasn't like she was schizophrenic. There was just, she had this, so I would frame it as a active imagination, but you may well frame it as just being more connected to that side of existence, maybe the universe, that kind of thing. And I know that we're not university people,
although, I do think something. I have a very good intuition.
You do, actually.
Yeah, I'm very good with people. Like I know immediately if someone is
you can spot a wrong un.
I really can. And the amount of times I've spotted a wrong un and Tim hasn't listened to me, and then, oh look, they've become a wrong un, and I have to do the I told you so dance.
You have to, don't you? It's compulsory.
I'm like, well, I did say. So I think, final thoughts then, what would you say to somebody who was contemplating this kind of therapy to help them with something?
Look, hypnotherapy can work absolute wonders. And I'm not just saying it because I'm a hypnotherapist. If anything, I'm a hypnotherapist because I know it can work wonders, if you know what I mean. That's my therapy of choice because I've seen what it can do.
Yeah.
It might not be for you. Who knows? Or the person that you see might not be the right person for you. I always think when we take that journey of, right, I want to change something about me, I'm going to get help to change it. Yeah?
Yes.
We still have to do that process of finding the person that we resonate with. Don't just accept the first person that you end up sat in front of. Back in the day when I was struggling, I went to see a hypnotherapist for something and it just wasn't the right person. Yeah. I didn't do the legwork of finding out who I wanted to work with. In my opinion, any sort of therapist should give you some free time because they have to check that they can work with you and you have to meet them and make sure they're the right person for you. Yeah. It is absolutely less about the method, more about the individual that is guiding you through that method. Yeah. So find the person that resonates with you and you will, I would absolutely be certain you would have great success. Yeah. And there's loads of things that can be anything to do with your mind. It's a great method. It's worth engaging in. Yeah. Oh. That makes sense.
That does make sense.
So I would absolutely encourage people to go for it because all it's doing is unlocking your potential. And, you could argue your potential is limitless when you really unleash it.
Isn't that nice?
Is that a nice?
That's a nice.
Have I tied a nice little bow on the hypnosis episode?
Yes.
There? Yeah.
Well, thank you, Tim, for your wonderful expertise.
Oh, you're very welcome.
On this subject. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it helpful and you get something positive from it. Thank you very, very much for listening, guys. As always, we really, really appreciate you. We appreciate seeing every time someone has downloaded and listened to the podcast. And if you are listening to it, please come let us know. You can come find me on Instagram at BrittMarieBox and you can find Tim at timboxmindcoach. So thanks very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
And keep thinking outside the box.
Bye.
Bye.